So here we are in Photoshop. I'm going to be using the brush tool and working with the layer mask. We worked on this image in class, so you should be familiar with it, and you should have this in the file folder as well. First thing, once your image is open, you're going to go to your layers palette and double click on that layer to activate it. Notice it changes the name, offers you some options here. You can name your layer, which is really what I suggest. So we are going to call this layer mask, because that's what we're doing, and hit OK. Now you see that it is now an active layer. That image is selected. I'm going to go straight down. See, my mouse is going straight down to this little rectangle with a circle, and I'm going to click on that, and that brings a layer mask into this photo layer. So, and you also see that the link there means they're connected. So whatever I do on this layer mask is going to be applied to the image that it's connected to. Okay, I'm going to go over to the brush tool on my tools palette, and I'm going to click on that brush. And one thing to make sure you stay aware of is that when you work in the layer mask, your fill colors on the left bottom part of your tools palette need to be black and white. The black color takes away from your image. Oops. And here we go. And the white brings it back. Now I already brought it back, and you can see I made a mistake there. This is actually good for you to see because I hit Command Z 2 times instead of once, so it brought me back 2 iterations in my history. We can go to the history palette, and you can see where it took me back to. So it doesn't matter. I'm going to go back to the history and start again. That's how you can reconcile mistakes like this. We hadn't gone very far in here anyway, so it didn't make any difference. So I'm starting from scratch. I just go back in history up to the top, back to my layers palette. Again, I'm going to have to double click on the layer, name it, hit OK. Go back down to the little rectangle with the circle. Click on that. My layer mask is there. And I'm going to go to my brush tool. And now I'm going to make sure that I have the black selected to take away. And then if I want to bring that back, I will turn the white there with the arrows so that the white box is up. And I can now, with the same brush, go back over and bring the photo back. Now you can see that it's not all coming back because my opacity is only at 65%. If I change that to 100%, then everything comes back. You can see this brush is pretty small too. So on your keyboard, to make your brush bigger, you're going to go to the brackets. It's next to the P. The left-hand bracket is to make your brush smaller. The right-hand bracket is to make your brush bigger. Make my brush bigger, brings it all back. Okay, so I want to silhouette this man. And to do that, I'm going to use my layer mask. I'm going to switch my color blocks there to black because I want to take away. And to do this quickly, or more quickly rather, I'm going to keep my brush really large now, right? So if I get up close to him and I have it at 100% opacity and I look at my brush statistics, the hardness is sort of in the middle. That's fine. But if I get really close to him, it really takes too much away. It totally ruins the image. I'll Command Z. That was 1 iteration back. But what I'm really keeping my brush large for is so I can take away everything in the background that I don't need really quickly, and I can just concentrate on him. So now I'm going to adjust my brush, go back under my brush specs, and I'm going to make the hardness a little bit harder. I'm going to bring down the size, and again, you can do it up there, or you can do it with your keyboard, which I highly recommend using the brackets, right? So the left bracket is to make it smaller, the right bracket is to make it larger. I think this is a good size for right now. I'm still using the black box, which is to take away. And you can see my line is a little bit stronger. It's not as feathery. It's not as soft an edge as I used before when the brush was larger, because I upped the hardness or the feathering. Hardness is the same thing as feathering is in the lasso tool. And you can see I can get a little bit closer. And I'm going to keep doing this And I'm going to work with the opacity, because as I get right on top of the lines, the outline of him, I'm going to lower the opacity, and I'm going to soften the brush, and I'm also going to reduce the size of the brush. So you can see how much have I done in the last, what, minute and a half? Almost the entire thing. But your bigger details are coming up now. So to enlarge your image, you're going to hit Command and plus, the plus sign on your keyboard. And to move around your canvas, you're going to hold down the space bar on your keyboard, and that little hand shows up, and you touch your screen, and it brings it around. Just hold down and move your mouse around, or your Wacom tablet, pen. So here I'm going to lower the size of my brush because I'm getting in close, and as you saw, the brush was way too big to get too close to him. I'm going to lower my opacity down to 85. Oh, let's make that 85 and hit return. And I'm going to be able to get in closer. See how the line gets significantly more sharp, which is fine. I'm not going to get it really sharp right up against him because I want to be able to keep that three-dimensional feel as I get really close in, because I don't want it to look like I've just cut him out with an X-Acto knife or a pair of scissors. And so you keep going around and just make your way through. And now, noting what I'm taking away and knowing that I have only 85% opacity, you can sort of see a little bit of what's left behind as I make my strokes here. But I'm not really getting a good idea of what I'm leaving, left over. So to remedy that, you'll go over to your layers palette and to the menu and make a new layer. And we're going to call this one color because I'm going to put a color in it. And I'm going to fill this layer with a color so that I can see what's going to show up in the background. Maybe I'm going to fill this with white. Just because I want to be able to see. It's a darker background from the actual image, and I want to see exactly what I'm leaving behind because I want to make sure that I get rid of everything that's around him. So I'm going to fill it with white. And that covers the image, but that's okay. I'm going to go to the layers palette again. I'm going to click and hold down on that layer. I'm just going to drag it underneath. So now you get a really good idea of what's left over, right? I can scroll around. You can see even on the big parts, there's stuff that I left behind, and we'll get to that. But for now, this is a good help for you to understand how much more work you do have to do, just so you don't leave stuff behind. Because as you work with these images and you work in silhouetting and you make collages of images and composites of images and you layer them on top of each other, all this leftover stuff comes with the image, so you'll be able to see it. And we don't want that. So I'm just going to continue to go around. And you can see I'm getting up pretty tight on his jacket here. And I'm treating this really like a paintbrush, or actually even a pencil, where I'm just making these really soft brush strokes. Oops, too much. Command Z to get rid of mistakes. So I'm at a point now here where I'm like, okay, this line is getting to be a little bit too strong, too harsh. So I'm going to go to the hardness, and I'm going to bring it down so that it's going to be a really soft line. And then I'm going to zoom in more, so Command plus sign. And I'm going to keep the size. See, I tried it out. The size, doing it that close, it takes too much. I can see it's going into his jacket. So I'm going to bring the size of the brush down just a little bit. And I'm doing that by hitting the left side, the left-hand bracket on my keyboard. And that looks good because I can have more control over how far the brush goes into the jacket. And again, I'm just doing really light brush strokes. You can see how much it's taking away. And it's subtle, and it takes time, but it's really worth it with when you get the end result. And it does take practice too, so I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It's gonna take you some time to get used to this and to really get the hang of it, and feel comfortable with it. But don't be afraid of that hard work because it's definitely worth it in the end. And you can see here how, whoops, when I'm doing this, I'm going back and forth between the enlarging my brush on the keyboard with those brackets, because as I get closer, maybe I want it to be a smaller brush, just a little bit, so I can get in really tight. Slow it down a little bit. But here I want to make it a little bigger. So I will automatically just switch between larger and smaller brush without even really thinking about it. It's just something that I do while I'm working. And that's where you're really practicing to get that comfortable with it. Okay, I'm going to shift or hold down the space bar and shift the workspace, my canvas around a little bit. Get rid of some background stuff. Too much. So I Command Z. And you can see it's really just gently coming away. Oops, too much. And sometimes it gets frustrating, but that's okay. It's going to get easier as you do it. Okay, I'm kind of happy with that. This is a little bit dark on the edge there. And you see I'm not right on top of it when I do it. I'm staying a little bit away because the hardness is so low. It spreads that end at the edge of the brush out more. So just keep doing that. Keep going around and silhouette your figure. And if you zoom out, you can see that looks pretty good right here. So I'm going to go around and do the rest of him, and then I'm going to be able to place him and all the other people in a group setting and then give them a background. And that's it. Let me know if you have any questions.